Hello, good morning. Shall we start, Eliu?
Yes, no,
Hello,
please,
good morning.
let's go ahead. Yes.
Good morning. My sincere apologies. You may hear a little bit of a background noise. Upstairs, they do some construction work. So I called the lobby to make sure that if they can stop it for a little while, and then that will be good. Good morning, colleagues, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, and dear friends. Eliu, would you like to, are you going to go live with this?
It is live. It's live. Go ahead.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. Let me welcome you all to the virtual event, Women, Peace and Security and Beijing+25, Progress and Challenges for Women and Girls in Palestine, organized by the United Nations Committee on the exercise of the inalienable rights of the Palestinian people. This committee efforts for the realization of the inalienable rights of the Palestinian people includes a focus on ensuring the empowerment of Palestinian women in line with the agreed outcome of the Commission on the Status of Women. I am Adla Ras, the permanent representative of Afghanistan to the United Nations in New York and the vice chair of the committee. I am honored to be moderating today's panel discussion with three remarkable Palestinian women from different areas of the occupied Palestinian territory and across generations. The discussion will be followed by a Q&A with the committee, other member states, and the audience. Before we start, let me remind everyone that this event is being streamed live via UN Web TV, Twitter, and UN YouTube channel as well. It's also being recorded and will be available on the committee website, Facebook, and YouTube channels for viewing at your convenience. I would like to give a warm welcome to the audience following us via different platforms. Everyone are also encouraged to tweet the hashtag Rights for Palestine. In these unprecedented times, when Israel, the occupying power, continues its action of de facto annexation of more areas in the occupied Palestinian territory, aims at situation exacerbated by COVID-19 pandemic, our committee has shifted its advocacy work into the virtual sphere. In the past months, we have been holding events with Palestinian and Israeli experts, politicians, activists, and civil society representatives to continue informing about the situation on the ground and rallying support and solidarity for the inalienable rights of the Palestinian people, including the rights to self-determination and independence. Today, we are convening a virtual event on the situation of Palestinian women and girls and their full inclusion in all spheres of public life, including political participation. For this discussion, we're joined today by Ms. Amal Jadou, Palestinian Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs from Ramallah, Ms. Hind Khoury, former Palestinian Minister for Jerusalem Affairs from East Jerusalem, and Ms. Noor Swirki, Palestinian community activists from Gaza. We also would be joined by Ambassador Feda Abdelhai Nasser, Deputy Permanent Observer of the State of Palestine to the United Nations here in New York. It's my pleasure to welcome the panelists and Ambassador Abdelhai Nasser. But before opening the panel discussion, let me say a few words about our committee. It was established by the United Nations General Assembly in 1975 to pursue the following main goals: promoting a just and peaceful settlement to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict in an end to Israeli occupation, realizing the two-state solution, Israel and Palestine living side by side in peace within secure and recognized borders, and supporting the exercise of the inalienable rights of the Palestinian people, including self-determination, sovereignty, and the right to return. We implement our mandate by raising awareness on the question of Palestine through a range of activities, among them events and conferences at the UN headquarters in New York and abroad, a capacity building program for the state of Palestine, in the annual observance of the International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people on November 29 every year. Today's virtual event on the situation of Palestinian women and girls, and taking place on the margin of the 65th annual session of the Commission on the Status of Women, the main intergovernmental body exclusively dedicated to the promotion of gender equality and the empowerment of women, and it's in context of the 25th anniversary of the Beijing Platform for Action. The theme of this year's CSW is women's full and effective participation in the decision-making in public life, as well as elimination of violence. We will be focusing on this topic with our distinguished panelists and take stock of past and present challenges faced by Palestinian women and girls while looking for ways forward. In 1995, the Fourth World Conference on Women in Beijing represented a watershed moment for equality between men and women, as it's defined women's rights as human rights. We have achieved significant progress towards the advancement of gender equality and empowerment of women since then. However, progress is uneven and often unstable. The road to full equality and empowerment remains very long. And in fact, no country in the world has achieved gender equality in the earnest. Palestinian women not only struggle to obtain traditional societal normals, but face the traditional burden of living under a nearly 54-year-long Israeli military occupation in the way of its limitation on their basic human rights, social, economic, and political rights. Like all Palestinians, they suffer forced family separation, displacement, home demolition, arrest and detention of children, and discrimination in almost every aspect of daily life. There are symbols of resilience, resistance, and steadfastness. Over the past 50 years, Palestinian women have contributed to the social fabric of the society and the Palestinian economy, while also participating actively in opposing the occupation. They also participated in the Madrid and Oslo processes. This year, the focus on political participation of Palestinian women becomes particularly relevant in view of the general election to take place in the upcoming election, including in the East Jerusalem. In 2006, 13% of those elected to the Palestinian Legislative Council were women. In 2021, the discussion in Cairo to increase participation of female candidates in the upcoming Palestinian election is an important step, which, if realized, will increase women's full, equal, and meaningful participation in leadership. The goal of a two-state solution of two countries, Israel and Palestine living side by side in peace and security along mutually recognized borders with Jerusalem as a capital of both states, remains elusive. Palestinian women have a crucial role to play in ensuring that the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, a necessary step towards peaceful, inclusive, and sustainable societies, is implemented. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, and my dear friends, it's now my honor to ask my colleague and friend, Ambassador Feda Abdelhadi Al-Nasser, the Deputy Permanent Observer of the State of Palestine to the United Nations here in New York, to deliver her remarks. Your Excellency, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and welcome to our distinguished panelists, and welcome to all attendees of our virtual event today. I wish to take a moment to recognize you, Ambassador Adel Araz, for your commitment to the just cause of Palestine in your service as Vice Chair of the Committee on the Exercise of the Inalienable Rights of the Palestinian People and acting rapporteur. We are grateful for Afghanistan's long-standing support and solidarity with the Palestinian people in their struggle to realize their rights, freedom and independence, justice and dignity in their homeland. Thank you also to the UN Division for Palestinian Rights for organizing this event and for all of its support to the committee in carrying out its General Assembly mandate. As we prepare for the 65th session of the Commission on the Status of Women, We appreciate this opportunity to consider the progress made and challenges facing women and girls in Palestine as we mark 25 years since adoption of the Beijing Platform for Action and 20 years since adoption of Security Council Resolution 1325 on women, peace, and security. We welcome and are honored by the participation of our three distinguished panelists, Dr. Amal Jadou, Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs of the State of Palestine, Ms. Hind Khoury, former Minister for Jerusalem Affairs and Ambassador of Palestine to France, and Ms. Noor Swirki, a community activist and journalist from the Gaza Strip. We very much look forward to hearing your views, insights, and advice. Madam Chair, as we consider the global situation of women, it is clear that progress has been made in these past 2 decades, but many striking inequities remain. The pandemic has not only exposed gaps and deficiencies, but intensified them, causing setbacks and creating new challenges for women around the world. As you so rightly noted, for Palestinian women and girls, those challenges are compounded, and any progress made has been repeatedly undermined by the Israeli occupation and its ongoing dispossession, displacement, and oppression of the Palestinian people. This illegal occupation affects every aspect of life and has inflicted a protracted humanitarian and protection crisis, exacerbating the problems already faced by women and girls due to societal and cultural norms that perpetuate gender equality for all women across the globe and to varying degrees. Yet despite the many challenges, we see that Palestinian women and girls, whether in occupied Palestine or in refugee camps across the region or in the diaspora, have carved for themselves a central place in our society and are pivotal for the building of a lasting peace and for the reconstruction and development of our nation if and when we reach a post-conflict era. Enduring decades of colonial occupation and human rights violations has fostered within the Palestinian people a high threshold of resilience, and women have proven to be among the most remarkable and resourceful. Across generations, they have adapted with agility in order to not only overcome hardship, but to thrive. An active women's movement and engagement, especially at the grassroots level, has long been a hallmark of the Palestinian story. Confronted by waves of crisis and the daily stress and trauma of conflict, Palestinian women have developed life-saving coping skills. They have learned to care for and nourish their families in the most meager of circumstances. They have partnered with each other in cooperatives and grassroots initiatives, including legal aid and counseling to assist victims of domestic violence and other forms of social support. They have learned to lead their households in cases where the male head of household has lost his livelihood or been imprisoned or killed by the occupation, accelerating their engagement in economic life, including through microfinance initiatives in the education and health sectors and in government institutions and civil society, among others. According to the Palestinian Central Bureau of Statistics, which is led by a Palestinian woman, Dr. Al-Awad, more than 1/10 of households in Palestine are led by women. Palestinian women have learned to recreate the protective space and sanctity of home for their families following destruction and evictions by the occupying forces. They have learned to give psychological and emotional support to their children traumatized by Israeli military violence, night raids, arrests and imprisonment, and terrorized by extremist settlers. Themselves the victims of the occupation's violence and jails, they've become advocates for the most vulnerable. They have prioritized education, with young women now exceeding male enrollment in university. They have preserved our traditions in embroidery, song, and our national cuisine. They are writers, doctors, nurses, parliamentarians, teachers, ministers, ambassadors, artists, lawyers, humanitarians, inventors, and everything in between. Their lived reality has necessitated and in some ways fast-tracked their participation in the social and economic life of our country. This has helped ease the constraints of patriarchy and broken new ground for roles typically perceived as reserved for males. The State of Palestine is also a proud signatory to the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, and we are working hard to harmonize our national legislation with this core international treaty ensuring rights and protections to women. So although much work needs to be done to achieve gender parity, notable advances have been made that can only be seen as exceptional under the conditions of occupation. Such gains are a testament to the immense potential for women's empowerment and agency in a post-occupation, independent, sovereign, democratic, peaceful, and secure Palestine, which remains our most ardent hope and goal. As we continue seeking a just solution to the Palestine question based firmly on international law and the relevant UN resolutions, we must insist that our efforts be attentive to the needs and roles of women and girls. Their contribution is one we cannot afford to ignore in our efforts to overcome the formidable obstacles on the path to achieving our rights, foremost the right to self-determination, and to achieving genuine Palestinian, Israeli peace and security, and an inclusive, egalitarian, and prosperous future. Studies have proven that the credibility, quality, and sustainability of peace agreements are greatly enhanced by women's meaningful participation. So their rightful place in our just struggle must be respected, including at the peace table and in decision-making and leadership roles in the political and diplomatic arenas. In Palestine, our women are able and ready to assume their responsibilities if given the chance. What is needed most now, and what can bring tangible, positive change, is action to fulfill the lofty objectives of Beijing and Resolution 1325, and to implement the UN resolutions on the Palestine question, the foundations of a just and peaceful solution. Together, these international commitments and laws are the keys to women's inclusion, equality, and empowerment, and are critical for the attainment of a just peace, and must be acted upon without delay. Thank you again, Ambassador Raz, and welcome again to our distinguished panelists and to all joining us for today's discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, my dear sister, Ambassador Abdulhadi, for your remarks. On behalf of the committee, I can assure you of our continued support to achieve the exercise by the Palestinian people for your inalienable rights. We now turn to our esteemed panel. Following the initial remarks by our panelists, I will open the virtual floor for discussion. We will be able to take questions which member states can pose via the chat box function in WebEx, and the public can also pose their questions via the Facebook page or Twitter account, and by sending an email to dpr-meeting@un.org or via WhatsApp +1, the US number, 646-421-0579. I now give the floor to Ms. Hind Khoury, former Palestinian Minister for Jerusalem Affairs from the East Jerusalem. Ms. Khoury was Minister of State for Jerusalem Affairs in the government of the Palestinian Authority and was also the Delegate General to France from March 2006 to June 2010. She is an active member and in several organizations and research institutions to contribute to ending the Israeli occupation in Palestine and to build a just peace in the region. Your Excellency, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Raz, and thank you very much to our dear Ambassador Shida. It's a pleasure to see her again after a long while. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, and dear friends, allow me first to extend my hearty greetings to the committee for the wonderful work that they do over so many years. They have really persevered alongside us to advocate for Palestinian rights in a true adherence to international law. Thank you very much. We just celebrated International Women's Day, and I really want to salute all Palestinian women, especially those lingering in Israeli prisons for their political activism or suffering the siege of Gaza or the isolation of East Jerusalem. Their perseverance, resilience, and courage humble me enormously. And actually, our women do not stop to amaze me, because in spite of the difficulties and the suffering and the humiliation, I would add, they stand tall every day in spite of all of that. And let me also salute women, of course, around the world. I'm a woman myself, and I know the double burdens, and I know how hard it is to manage so many issues and files and problems at the same time. We juggle well, but hopefully that all of us together, we continue to be agents of change for a better tomorrow for all of us. And don't we need it in the region? 25 years after Beijing, the United Nations can congratulate itself for its achievements to tenaciously promote gender equality. And I think a lot has been done. Ensuring empowerment of women as equal partners shall be one of the most important milestones towards human progress, or so I believe very strongly. For the sake of time, I want to tell the story. It can never be short in the Palestinian context, but tell the story of how Palestinian women imposed their rights already a century ago. They have already then, early in the 20th century, organized into a movement and joined the national struggle alongside their countrymen against the threat of colonization and dispossession. They held congresses, practiced public diplomacy, demonstrated and boycotted national goods, even then, early last century, and provided social and humanitarian services and organized popular resistance initiatives. They continued to be active and organized in support of their people at every other milestone of our tumultuous history, all the way to the First Intifada, which brought them social and national recognition at par with their countrymen. The signing of the Oslo Accords, I think, is an important milestone, which coincided almost with the Beijing conference in 1995, brought a promise of transitional autonomy, of a certain level of freedom, of rights, which seemed okay. And women forged ahead with propositions to draft laws and calling for their rights and working for the national goals. As Israel practically worked at canceling its commitments to the accords since the assassination of Rabin in 1995, I think, it continued to further entrench and deepen the occupation. I mean, really, since Oslo, I think the occupation has become part of our not only daily life, but every hour of our life. And continued to expand Jewish-only settlements on our land, ensure that Palestinians are pushed into overcrowded enclaves, which we live in today, and forcefully emptying Area C, meaning the rural areas with the agricultural lands and the water resources of its Palestinians and their businesses, including in the Jordan Valley. This had dramatic consequences to Palestinians, and more so to women and girls, as poverty and unemployment rose dramatically. Religious fanaticism became rampant, unfortunately, but maybe that's a result of poverty and suffering. Natural resources were denied to us. The productive sectors greatly diminished, especially agriculture, which is a very stable sector, and growing daily oppression of an army armed to the teeth and very violent colonial settlers in our midst, to the extent of lynching a boy of 14 in Jerusalem, lynching and burning alive, burning a young family in north, close to Nablus, where the mom and baby died and maimed the rest, burning olive groves almost on daily basis, and isolating and Judaizing Arab East Jerusalem, which is the heart of our culture and identity. And the list is too long, but the most dramatic, of course, I think, is the siege and painful siege of Gaza that persists now from 2007, and its most intolerable human consequences. I mean, the UN says that already last year, Gaza is unlivable. So I don't want to even start to think what a horrible reality women live there and girls, let alone everybody else. I will try to analyze the reasons behind the dramatic regression in women's rights since Oslo until today, because these are the issues we need to address if we are to move forward. not only that the rights have been undermined, I think we reached a point of internal schism in the consensus on women's rights in the Palestinian society. I shall make one point head on though. It was perhaps the gradual change of focus of the women movement agenda and activities away from directly addressing national goals of ending occupation and daily oppression to women's rights per se, based on international law. I mean, this is the discourse that was adopted. This has been done in an environment where international law could not succeed to deliver on Palestinian rights, as we well know. This move distanced the struggle of the women movement from the grassroots, and I think this is a basic problem that we need to handle. This change happened within a donor-driven system of finance and influence, which turned women towards their own grievances, away from the national goals, perhaps to avoid excessive Israeli pressures. The bottom line is that within the wider prison, where all rights are violated, it was somehow controversial to focus on women's rights as an objective in itself. I think gender equality remains crucial for any society, and to ours as well, but more as the means to reach the objective of freedom and well-being for society as a whole. So, for all the promise gender equality can help realize, for all the international investment made in supporting women empowerment, all the many missions and conventions, research, seminars, and projects, for all the diligence and tenacity of Palestinian women in pursuing their rights, it's sobering to realize that so little finally was achieved. And as a matter of fact, the status of Palestinian women has even regressed in the last 25 years, post-Beijing and post the Oslo Accords. And with it, the promise of proportional representation, participation, and prevention of violence. And here I would have to add a footnote that Palestinians have tried and pushed women in spite of the many other complexities the authority and the leadership have to deal with. So I need to emphasize again that the obvious, and that it is not possible to discuss and speak of Palestinian rights, their freedom and empowerment, outside the context of prolonged occupation and prolonged exile of our refugees. And then the demise of international law, which reached its peak during the Trump administration years, left no doubt about the fact that this world is finally ruled by the philosophy of might is right. The destruction and suffering we lived through in Palestine spread out to our region, as we saw during the last 10 years. In Iraq, in Syria, Yemen, and Libya, and with other regional countries on the verge of collapse. This is proof that the bottom line is, in the existing skewed international system, which came to ignore the human factors to the most unimaginable extent. So the geographical interest of international and regional power seemed to eclipse the promise of international law. This system is not only denying rights to the oppressed, but criminalizing any resistance to it. So Palestinians became the terrorists. It is through this ambivalent system that we are also judged, a system that denies us the tools of accountability and liberation. I mean, just like, let's follow the discussion on the ICC decision to start investigation of war crimes, for example, which we appreciate, but then let's hope it will be materialized. Now, truly, the establishment of the PA was male-dominated. In addition, the lack of renewal and elections and the demise of our democratic institutions with the divisions and the various impasses, including the legislature, most of the population became rather excluded from the public domain anyway. So were youth and women, which represent the great majority. Also, the fragmentation and division among Palestinian factions over the Oslo Accord is understandable in the context of their practical demise. These accords were emptied from their content by a powerful Israel and could not be the sole way to go forward towards any semblance of peace. Equally important is the absence of a successful strategy for liberation where women could find their place and identify a meaningful political role. The highly skewed balance of power. I'm sorry. The highly skewed balance of powers against Palestinian rights and lives lowered the ceiling of negotiations for political rights, and led to further concessions. Add to this the growing rift between leadership and grassroots invited external influences and pressures on our decision-making process, a tendency that is becoming increasingly obvious. We also have to admit we have a patriarchal social system. It's a traditional social system, but it has gained new life while the peace process was failing. It's also easy to speak of gender equality within the Palestinian body politic, so invested in pursuit of peace or of resistance to it, and somehow postpone the necessary investment in leadership renewal that allows accountability and progress in building a nation and meeting people's needs and aspirations. At the level of the women organization, the success realized through an organized women movement, which was based on voluntary work and associations, have weakened due to the demise of the PLO institutions after Oslo, or the weakening, especially the General Union of Palestinian Women as an umbrella organization. The movement then became fragmented rather a bit by establishing a large number of NGOs led by elite women. But though these NGOs are doing great and necessary work for gender equality and other right issues that cannot be undermined, they became increasingly donor-driven in their agenda and hence distanced themselves from the grassroots. Women activism centered exclusively on their rights, while all Palestinians suffered a horrible reality of daily oppression and dispossession, and almost unsurmountable difficulties under occupation and Israeli Jewish supremacy. So this has narrowed the discourse and the agenda of women struggling for their legitimate rights. Now, to make matters worse, we shall have to deal with the consequence of the COVID pandemic. I mean, post-COVID socioeconomic implications are and will be dramatic. The bad situation Palestinians found themselves in a year ago has only become much worse, with more poverty, more unemployment, insufficient health services, growing education needs, and a struggling and a public sector, normally, with the risk of growing chaos and violence for which, again, women and girls will pay the highest price. Last but not least, the difficulties in finding common grounds with Israeli women, who, after Oslo, there were lots of cooperation and discussions and meetings. However, Israeli women chose not to address political issues. I mean, how do you want to talk about any relation if Israeli women don't want to talk about occupation or discrimination or human rights or violence of the oppressor of the occupation, etc. So as a result, in a way, both movements have been depoliticized. Now, clearly, there are opportunities to move forward towards real peace and security. In my view, it's possible. Maybe I'm a hopeless optimist. But then there are conditions and there are things, there are areas that hold this promise, but we need to work on them. I think the onus is on the international community, first and foremost, and even more so on the new US administration, which with some courage and clarity can bring about decency and integrity to governance, international governance and local governance, so absent in the last 4 years. Let's hope that the foreign policy guidelines of the new US administration in support of human rights, of democracy, and multilateralism will not leave Palestinians out, as is usually the case. Let's hope that the new administration will be true to its promises this time around and will not fall to the influence of policies and decisions made in Tel Aviv. Now, as the Palestinian level, at the Palestinian level, our youth are an incredible promise. Every day I'm amazed by their qualifications, their performance, and their dedication and commitment to the justice of their cause. And I feel small in comparison to them. So for me, this is a great sense of hope. Both Palestinian men and women continue to achieve really higher status as individuals and as groups, excelling in many professional, intellectual, artistic, and scientific fields. Women achieved, we have full literacy, of course, and while we worked for rights and we are active, we are preserving family and community, continuing education, even enjoying life as is, and nurturing healthy and wide social and culinary traditions and cultural traditions. After COVID, at the international level, all countries will have to address local issues and hopefully will decrease their interferences and gerrymandering to gain hegemonic powers and will ensure respect to international law. At the internal level, the COVID shock brought to the fore the non-viability of what much of globalization was about and underlined the importance of reverting to developing local economies and back to eating what we saw, as we say in Arabic, kind of logic. At the Palestinian level, the situation looks too bleak to handle, truly. Already before COVID, the PA was pushed towards disintegration and bankruptcy. The economic and social crisis hit rock bottom. Democratic institutions were further weakened, and a sense of loss filled the place. After COVID, I do not know how we shall start all over again. How do we address these hurdles? But I somehow believe we can. I'm perhaps a blind romanticist, but I strongly believe it. When there is a will, there is a way. It's both a hope and a possibility. If also there is a will that our religious beliefs revert to what they really are. They uplifted the status of the human being to the image of God. How much more noble are we expected to be? They advocated for the great universal human values that has transformed the world as we know it today. They cannot and should not be a cause for war and exclusion of the other, but directives to repair the world. And here I will use a Hebrew biblical sentence called tikkun olam. I really, that's what we should be doing, repairing the world, starting with this wonderful holy land of ours. This shared heritage, Christian, Muslim, and Jewish, is a responsibility to every one of us that we should nurture and preserve. Now we have Palestinian elections coming up, and this, I can't believe the amount of enthusiasm that has unleashed in all, cross sections of the community. Our people have not been heard for too long. Our younger ones, who make 65% of the population, have never been heard. So it is a great time. Let's hope these will take place. Maybe I will say more on how these things are being prepared. How is this enthusiasm translated into real preparatory work for these elections into real and absolutely necessary. Israeli elections are a few days away. Elections are a few days, causing a deep and clear rift in Israeli society that does not bode well into the future. So will there be change? Will Israeli women organize themselves to make a difference and bring some sense and humanity into the madness of this occupation and ethnic and religious supremacy? I certainly hope so. Now, my final note, really, you may find this strange, but I feel I want to address it to Israeli women. At the end of the day, we're here together and will remain together on this land in whatever political format that may perspire, or whenever as well. We are capable, you are capable, smart and professional, with great possibilities for contacts in the world. You have succeeded to come up with a movement, the Women Wage Peace, focused on peace and security. But you failed the test of courage to take political stands on the issue of discrimination, state and settler violence, occupation, dispossession, and other woes imposed on the Palestinian people. I pray you will succeed to take your movement forward. We can agree on the human agenda, on the shared heritage, on the legacy of peace and security that we need to inherit to our young generation, on the importance of human rights, on Palestinian needs and rights to equality and freedom. This is a starting point, though insufficient. There has to be discussions on the abuse of religion versus our shared heritage, the inhumanity of the occupation, which hurts both oppressed and the oppressor, the cessation of violence, including state and settler violence, recognition of Palestinian right of self-determination, and security for both of our people. We can't continue talking about Israeli security only. You can take comfort in the power of your army for so long. I hope the day will come, and sooner than later, to come back to us so we can talk, cooperate, and play the role required of us on both sides of the divide. Thank you very much, Ms. Ambassador.
I thank Ms. Khoury for her remarks and for sharing her very rich experience as a Palestinian official, as well as inspiring thoughts for the future of the state of Palestine. I now give the floor to Ms. Amal Jadou, a Palestinian Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs from Palestine. Jadou was appointed Deputy Foreign Minister in September 2019 and previously held other positions at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. She served as the Director General of International Affairs for Office of the President of the Palestine as well. Ms. Jadou, you have the floor. You're good. Please. We cannot hear you. I think there is a technical issue with probably your mic because you're unmuted and we still cannot hear you. Maybe if you allow me, Amal, I can go to the next speaker and we'll come back to you. And hopefully by then we would be able to fix the technical issue. Okay, I'm going to go to the next speaker and then we'll come back to Ms. Amal. I would like to give the floor to Ms. Noor Swirki, the Palestinian community activist from the Gaza Strip. Ms. Noor is a Palestinian feminist and human rights activist. She is the project coordinator at the Center for Women's Legal Research in Consulting in Gaza. She also has experience in monitoring and reporting human rights violation at the Gaza sub-office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights. Ms. Noor, the floor is yours.
Yeah. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to participate in this important event and to address all these obstacles and challenges which is facing the Palestinian women and girls in our Palestine, in our local community. So first of all, to start about my topic, which is about the civil society as a partner in for the foreseen Palestinian state, I would like to highlight on the most recent update related to the civil society, which happened or took place in the 2nd of March, this March, when the Mr. President Mahmoud Abbas make this presidential decree about to modify the local the NGOs and the Relief Association law, which was adopted in 2000. This modification, according to the human rights groups and the NGOs, the Palestinian NGOs, is restriction, put some restrictions on the work of this civil society organization and shrinking the civil society, the civic space, the Palestinian civic space. And this come among a historical trend practiced by the authority to put more restriction on the civil society since 2007. This critical and alarming update put many questions about the needed or the expected role for the civil society organization and the women participation among this civil society organization to make this partner or this role in the future of the state. In addition, that there was too many obstacles mentioned by my colleagues before, like the occupation, the Israeli measures, and the de facto authority in Gaza Strip, in addition to the social norms and the local community stereotyping for the women role in the local community. All of these elements is putting more pressure on the civil society organization work and the women participation among that civic Palestinian civic space. And in a way or another, this affects the delivery of the work towards the local community and the contribute to shrinking this civic space. To be more specific, as part of this public atmosphere, which is not stable, even on the social level or the security level or the political level, because we have this Palestinian division and we have this de facto authority in Gaza Strip, while the BA is on the West Bank and Israel is everywhere with its practice. So we have three duty bearers, which is controlling in a way or another this civic space, work environment or atmosphere or context, and this make like an fiction or a reflection on that work not supporting this woman participation, because it's reflected in the type, the quality, the quantity of women participation, even though in the national policies and mechanism and committees, unfortunately, women were excluded from most of that participation. And mainly when I'm talking maybe on Gaza Strip, in addition to the Palestinian context in general, the absence of the stable political and social and security situation and the absence of the democratic process in the last years, which affects directly and hit most of the women efforts which was being delivered in that years to contribute to the build and to the local community and the Palestinian state in the same time. And unfortunately, this doubled the load on women because they have this double load in the community, in their homes, and their organization, and this put more pressure on them to do more and to deliver more, to have a change. But at the end, there is not that big a change, and there is a change, but it could be, or personally, I could consider it a minor change, because still when there is something national, women were not participating in the way that they should be and expected to be or to take this role in that way or another. Like it was mentioned when we talk about the COVID-19 pandemic committees, when we talk about the Israeli escalation and its impacts, when we talk about the blockade or the closure, the Israeli closure on Gaza Strip, demolition, airstrikes, all of this violation, human rights violation, is putting this effect or reflect on the Palestinian women as the weakest in this circle and in the weakest part on that community. And at the end, they are mostly not included or excluded from taking part of the solving, like women were excluded from the reconciliation meeting in a way or another, in the council Gaza reconstructing committees and the COVID-19 response committees, also and the political participation in the Palestinian faction and the movements. They don't have this appearance because they were also excluded on the past years. And in the civil society, we have the women organization, which work mainly and headed by women, while other organizations, they don't have this percentage of women participating as the head of this organization, while they are participating as officers and employees. So all of this non-stable context in the past years and in the upcoming years for sure, because nothing will be solved in a way in this fast, particularly that we are going to the Palestinian election, which is considered like the light of at the end of this path. Maybe women are looking to that election as any of the anyone of this Palestinian community, but we as women, we are looking for this as a chance and an opportunity to make some change, because we need that, because we have too many needs that is related to the Palestinian division and to the Palestinian unity and the unity of the civil society and the Palestinian civic space, because we can make this a change and make this apply more pressure to participate in the decision making, and as it's needed, the issue of protection for women, the laws, the legislation, the healthcare services, the social services, also the economic empowerment for women, all of this should be included and promoted more in the national and in the grassroots, also in the level of the grassroots, because we are as it's always mentioned, that we are part of this community, but unfortunately, when it comes to the true or the reality, we are not taken serious in that part, because we are considered not eligible to that duties and tasks. I really don't know this patriarch mentality that even the community and the decision makers are treating us as women, even in the in all the community. Also, back to the election issue, as it was recorded in the Central Election Commission, that that half of the expected electors are women, and they are registered in the Palestinian registration book, and a minor change was happened in the quota among to the most updated modification for the election law, because we were in 2006, we were only about 20%, and we have this mixed system of election. Now we have one system, which is the blocks or the list, one list on for the whole country, and we have this more number for women in the list. Like we have women in the first three session, and then every 4 names should include women. So this came up with a percentage of 26, maybe our number of 34 women from out of 132 women for the block, and this could be considered a change, a positive change, but not meeting that change that we expect from the authority, because we were looking and debating in the past year for 30% of each block, and in the same time to make this guarantees that the same percentage, the 30%, should be also included in the Palestinian Legislative Council. But as usual, despite all of these challenges, these obstacles, women will continue their work, their efforts, and they will work as usual to reach the foreseen goals, the foreseen change, and to make something to their communities and to themselves in the same time. And we are all looking in our civil society and our Palestinian civic space to find and to rehabilitate a political system, a system that support women organization, women participation, and the civil society and civic space. All of this will support our role and our foreseen vision for our state of Palestine. Thank you for your time.
I thank Ms. Noor for her remarks and for sharing her direct experience of the challenging situation faced by Palestinian women in the Gaza Strip. With these valuable and inspiring thoughts, we would be ready to move ahead and kick off the question session. But before doing so, I would like to go back to Amal and see if she is able to join and as well as speak with us. Miss Amal, are you there? I believe she still has trouble in being able to join us. Are you able, Miss Amal, to join us? Okay. Hello?
Hello, yes, I can join you off the phone now.
Okay, great. We don't have your video, but we do have your sound pretty clear.
Okay, very good. Well, sorry for all of this mess, technically speaking, but it really happens. I'm very pleased to be with you today. I've listened carefully to, first of all, let me thank you for organizing this and for the committee for organizing this, for all the people who've been working with us on this, Laura and Nadia and others from the Palestinian mission, but also from the committee, from the Committee on the Exercise of the Inalienable Rights of Palestinian People. I wanted to say that many of the issues that I really wanted to cover have been covered by Ambassador Abdel Hadi and Minister Hind Khoury and also from my colleague in Gaza. I want to say a few words and basically, share, go to the floor for the questions and answers. I wanted to say that, first of all, the pandemic is a two-tailed situation for us. And we cannot basically talk about the situation or the issue of women participation in politics or in any aspect of life without basically delving into this issue. This situation basically has basically brought a rising inequality for some people, but also given opportunity for others. And it's very important for us basically in order to deal with the situation. I mean, it has posed on us a situation where we have to reimagine the world. I believe that we need to reimagine the world with one very important idea, and that is it's very important to enhance equality in our societies, be it basically at the level of gender, but also at the level of access to the vaccination today, many other issues that the world is dealing with. And for Palestine, as we basically reimagine the world, I think we need to reimagine our country. We cannot reignite a path to liberating our homeland with half of our population marginalized. And despite everything that is said and being done, today women in Palestine still face many difficulties. It is an uphill for any woman basically to take up her role within our societies. It's not easy. I believe it's not easy for any woman in the world, and for women in Palestine, I think the problem is compounded. Basically, you have the Israeli occupation and its policies and violations against our rights as both men and women, as a society, at large, but specifically on women, because we face double violence. We face the violence of occupation, the direct violence of occupation that men face, but then also the violence that men basically are exposed to translate itself into violence against women, and we have domestic violence, high rates of domestic violence that we also need to tackle and deal with. So basically, in my opinion, occupation is the mother of all evils, but there are things that Palestinians themselves need to take up in order to enhance our societies. And yes, there has been many progresses made in the past few international agreements, to enhancing certain laws. Basically, the quota system has been increased to 26% from 20%. Yes, Sana, basically we were talking about 30%. We were fighting as a women's movement for 30% when the hope needs to be 50%, 50-50. Men and women need to be equal in any society. But even the 30% that basically were promised has been dropped to 26%. So basically, there are things that we need to also continue to fight for. Yes, there is huge hope and euphoria within the Palestinian society now that we'll have elections, that this will allow for the participation of the young and the women, and hopefully basically we will have better representation of the young and women within the Legislative Council and within the ranks of leadership. But still, still basically, this is one step in the right direction. When it comes to basically, the statistics. I mean, if we look at the statistics, it's basically, they're basically shocking. The gap in, for women in the ministerial positions is 72%. And usually ministers take up ministries that deal with, social issues or health issues, but not, for example, foreign politics or finance. Out of, I think 16 governors, we have one woman governor. Out of 107 ambassadors all over the world, we have 12 women ambassadors. Out within the judicial system, the gap is 64%. So basically, there is movement. We are moving in the right direction, and change is not easy. But I believe that things also need to happen within the mindset within our society. Basically, I believe it's very, very important that, with education, I believe education is a very important tool that will empower women. I think also media plays a role on basically the roles of men and women in society and their roles in society. This is something extremely very important. Basically the upbringing, the social upbringing at home plays a very important role. And I actually, from my personal experience, I can say with such, assertiveness that seriously, had I not had a dad like the father that I had, basically who really believed in me, supported me, pushed me forward, and a husband who's been also, on my side and supportive, I think that things would have been much, much more difficult. And I don't think that I would have basically reached the position of a deputy foreign minister. And, mind you, within the Palestinian system, how many women deputy ministers do we have? Seriously, just myself and now another deputy minister of economy. And I don't think that this is enough. I think that numbers do matter within any society. It's very important that basically, we see a more and more involvement of women within the political sphere. Now, UN Security Council Resolution 1325 speaks about, the role of women in peace and security in negotiations, and this is very important. I think that, in the early 90s, when Madrid conference started, we had 2 women participating in the negotiations, since then, all the series of negotiations that we had in the 90s and after the year 2000, we did not have many women. And I think part of it is basically the activism of women. I think that it's true what Dr. Hind Khoury spoke about. Yeah. Basically, we've struggled, we were fighters, we were organizers, we participated in the, struggle for liberation. But after Oslo, we felt that, peace has arrived, let's focus on the social agenda. And I think we pulled ourselves in a way or another from the sphere of politics, and we allowed the men to, feel comfortable within their own sphere. And I believe it is very important for women also to continue their path within the political sphere, because that's how you make a difference. It's very important that we are represented in the Legislative Council, because then we can impact the laws that will basically shape our society. It's very important that we play political roles. It's very important that we're basically in every sector of life. And yes, Palestinian women, you find them in every sector in life, except for the political sphere. And I think that, sometimes because this is a domain where, sometimes the political parties compete for certain, quotas, and they prefer basically to have men, because this is, in general, this is what, they think that this is a domain for men. All of this is in a context of also occupation, because, as was said very clearly, our main fight, our main struggle is with occupation. We want to see an end to the Israeli occupation that started, and we want to be part of the negotiations that will lead to that, because, President Abbas basically forged, and before that, President Arafat forged a peaceful approach to ending the occupation through diplomacy. And basically, I believe, this is very important for us, that we are also taking, role in the negotiations that hopefully will be coming up. In general terms, also, I want to say that, the situation today is in Palestine is, as was described. I mean, there was no abiding by the UN resolutions that were basically, that were adopted on the Palestinian questions, since the occupation started, and since basically the partition plan, basically no resolution was adopted. And, and especially when it comes to resolutions dealing with, peace and security, basically these have not been also implemented. So, responsibility is with the international community, yes. Responsibility is with the occupying power, Israel, to end its occupation, and we need to be seeing our right to self-determination accomplished. But also there is a responsibility on the Palestinian people. I believe, the responsibility towards our women, basically towards us as women, also lies on ourselves as women, as Palestinian women, basically to take up our role in the political sphere and to push forward in that domain. I think that, it can also help in liberating our society, because as I started out by saying, without a liberated half of our society, the women, I don't think that we can really achieve the liberation of our country. I think that we need to forge together, work together, hand in hand, men and women, in order to see that happen. I believe that, few issues that I wanted basically to share with you. Basically, education is one very important element to help in that regard. Role models have been an amazing, element. For me, Dr. Hanan Ashrawi, who is a member of the executive committee, stands out as an example of a woman who is committed, dedicated, worked very hard to see an end for occupation, basically is an amazing role model for all women. Basically, working on economic independence of women is very essential. Training and, raising awareness about the woman's strength, the internal strength that a woman and a man have is very essential, and training on leadership roles is very essential. Partnering with the gendered men, I would say, basically, is also very important, because we're not alone in this. I think we need to be working together. Media plays a very essential role. And then a buy-in from the private sector will also help in that regard. So basically, these are the ideas that I really wanted to share with you when it comes to the, women participation in politics. It's very important to say that, usually for Palestinian women, our feminism, nationalism, and fight for the struggle, against the colonialism are basically, are in, are a combination that each woman of us has. And basically we're trying to, work on each the agenda of, first of all, foremost is our liberation from the Israeli occupation, ending the Israeli occupation and having our own state, but also seeing our society and the quality of our society from an angle where basically there is a respect for, for human rights, for women's rights, we want to see basically a society that respects all of its sectors. I'll stop here, and I'll basically, I thank you again for giving me the floor, and sorry for the technical problems, but I believe that usually discussions are better than the starting out statements that we make. I believe that again, Minister Khoury and Ambassador Fida and our colleague from Gaza, Ms. Swirki, also covered most of the issues, and I look forward to the questions that will be raised. But I wanted really to shed light on the internal element. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Amal. This was excellent. I think a very informative discussion, and so many elements that I believe women across the world share, especially women in politics. And I think you added a really important element to it, which is education, of course. But there is also, I think, building constituents. As for if we do not build that constituency, there would be always a limited space for women to come to politics. We now moved on to the question session, and in order to kickstart the conversation, let me take advantage of my role, of course, as a position of moderator and ask a question to each of the panelists. After I pose my question, we will take more questions from the audience, and then I will give the floor to our distinguished guests for their answers. So my first question would be to Ms. Khoury, is that how can the inclusion in participation of Palestinian women be assured at all levels of decision making? Based on your experience with women civil society groups and currently with electoral lists, how would you suggest the international community better supports these groups for their inclusion and higher representation at an impactful political level? My second question is to Ms. Amal. What has been the progress since the signing of the international instruments, including the Convention on Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women by the State of Palestine in 2014 to align norms and standards via the advancement of the status and rights of Palestinian women? And my third question is to Ms. Noor. Which national mechanisms, including at grassroots level, are necessary to ensure the inclusion of women in the pursuit of peace as well as democratic processes? What is the role played by civil society organizations in Gaza for the upcoming elections and national reconciliation? We can start, I can start to our first panelist. Ms. Khoury, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Raz. Well, we have so many skilled women. I mean, not only skilled, I mean, gracious, elegant, well-spoken, very well educated, very well brought up. In general, most Palestinians were so politically aware. Actually, if you take a boy of 12 from any refugee camp and just you're able to discuss with them almost any political issue. So, and I think since the capacities are there, what they need is an opportunity. But I know from my own experience, sort of, I entered politics from the big door, like overnight. But it was great, and I know women are, we're dedicated for the future. I think that's the difference. Already, for example, for me at my age, I think I only worry what I'm leaving for the next generation. I'm really worried about our legacy to the next generation, and it hasn't been good so far. I'm a bit ashamed of it. We have no vision of how we're going to move ahead. We have lots of issues and problems to deal with. They're left hanging in mid-space. So opportunity is important. I hope these elections will take place, and I think it is a great opportunity. I hope most of the proposed lists will include even more women than 26%. I think some will, as a matter of fact. I heard some important, leaders who want to present lists have made a commitment to include as many women as possible. Go and choose. I think there will be no problem with that. So, now on the other hand, as I said in my presentation, I think we need to acknowledge, it is the moment of truth. The issues we're dealing here today are extremely important. So the donor community have extended appreciated assistance to the Palestinian people and to the civil society sector. But we need to recognize the drawbacks. They have also scattered the voice of women because NGOs became, instead of one women movement, we have thousands of NGOs. In the absence of economic development, because our industrial sector has shrunk to have agriculture, which absorbed most of the women work in the informal sector, has shrunk from, 17, 18% to less than 3%. Maybe even it's less today. Of course, we don't have the land or we don't have the water anymore. But this is a disaster. We can't. And then NGOs became an economic sector. Became, if you're working in an NGO, you can't give up the job because otherwise you can't feed the children. And we are caught in a catch-22. So donors are key in how they set the agenda for women. Help representative organizations, please. Why is it the General Union of Palestinian women has been weak and probably has never given any real assistance, for example. We need to strengthen unions. We need to strengthen women in political parties. We need to strengthen women in the labor unions, in the lawyers' union, in the doctors' union. They're barely present in these unions. And anyway, these unions are jeopardized by political groups for political gains, and very often don't even have proper elections sometimes, like the labor union, for example. So this requires serious rethinking and serious policy making. I'm saying this with pain in my heart, because it is a shame in a world where resources are becoming so scarce that resources are really wasted when we don't have real social change. Let me also say something. Palestinians are not poor. We are knowledgeable. We know how to make business, even under the most dire circumstances. We survived. The cost of occupation, I'm president of a wonderful research organization called ARIEJ, and they have studied the cost of occupation, and it turned out to be about $10 billion for 2015. Now, please allow us get this occupation off our back, and we don't need assistance. We can manage on our own, and we'll make promises, and we already made so many promises and concessions, as a matter of fact, that it's sometimes mind-boggling. We gave up in our homeland, which is the whole of Palestine. We are accepted to live on 22% and ensure that Palestinians living inside Israel have equal rights, and that our refugees are compensated or have the right to return. This is an incredible compromise. And since then, we compromised more. We said, yes, swap of territory in the negotiations. Most issues have been addressed in the negotiations. Really few elements have been left to finalize the negotiations. Why aren't these moving ahead, for example? The international community needs to acknowledge that it was not enough to have these fantastic UN resolutions. We were very well supported, and thanks God we have that. Maybe that's the only thing we really have. But then let's move forward to implementing these resolutions, one at a time. I remember during the Bush administration, Bush the son, when Condoleezza Rice and then envoy of the quartet, Blair, visited, I don't know how many, 20 times or even more. None of them could do anything to remove one checkpoint or to move ahead any kind of serious talk on anything. The international community begs, and then they can't deliver on anything. Please, let's look on where the pressure is coming. This has become a joke. And let me also add, honestly, I'm a retired woman. I said, politics have lost all credibility. This cannot go on. We need leaders in the world that are role models. As Emma said, role models are extremely important. We don't have them anymore. And what kind of situation is this to our young? What are we teaching them? Yes, education is important. But then what in real life, what are we teaching our young people? So I think this requires, of course, more meticulous thinking and to really put up an action plan. But, you know, these are the main points. If they're addressed, we can certainly move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for this very passionate answer. And I'm going to now turn to Ms. Amal. You're muted.
Oh, sorry. Well, you know, a lot has been done on this issue. Basically, you know that Palestine has joined many agreements and you know, signed many treaties, including the CEDAW. And basically, you know, we have been working on aligning our domestic laws with the treaties that we have signed. I believe, you know, the adoption of CEDAW without any reservation, you know, was something that, you know, we're very proud of. But I believe also now that we are in the process of the, you know, of seeing that its clauses are being implemented, and there are many, you know, excellent, basically, you know, articles or basically, the agreement itself is extremely very valuable. What I believe is needed today in our society is, you know, a societal dialogue about some of the articles, because it seems that there are certain disagreements within certain basically you know, clauses within that agreement, within that treaty. And I'm being completely frank and honest. I mean, basically the Minister of Women Affairs and many in the Palestinian women's movement are doing an amazing job in order to basically explain and basically engage with the different sectors of society in order to you know, make sure that we move in one direction in the implementation of that agreement. I wanted also to touch on, you know, what Minister Khoury said. Basically, I believe also Palestinian. Yes, there is some, you know, drivenness, or you know, some NGOs are driven by the international funding, and it is true that, you know, what we call the NGOization of, you know, of the Palestinian, you know, women, some NGOs. You know, it is true that, you know, basically, this is very important element. But I also believe that there is enough stamina and there is enough clarity, you know, within the Palestinian women's movement, and basically, you know, like really hard work towards basically pushing the agenda of you know, of gender, but also pushing the agenda of ending the occupation and being, you know, ending the colonialism that Israel is basically imposing on the Palestinian territory. And I believe that there are also enough friends in the international community, you know, member states, and also the UN, who have been extremely pushing in enhancing the role of women in politics. And you know, I've seen countries with feminist foreign policy, you know, that were helping basically women in politics and young women in politics. I'll mention one project. The Palestinian Ministry of Women Affairs has basically been pushing or basically introducing this project, whereby they're choosing 30 women who are graduates of, you know, who are basically students in the universities, Palestinian different universities, who are in the different sectors, because we want to, you know, engender, push, enhance leadership, not only in the political sector, but also in other sectors. But they're basically receiving training and awareness, you know, on also the political elements. So basically they are they're in different fields, but their orientation, their basically training and their leadership skills are also focused at the political level. And I believe such projects need to be supported and need to be enhanced. And I know that several European countries, for example, are supporting in that direction. So this is just one example where the government, basically the ministry itself, is pushing. And I believe that there are many other initiatives that can be pushed and can be introduced in order to enhance women's participation in Palestine. I also believe, as Minister Khoury said, we are the agents of change, and we bring hope to our country. And I believe that, it's very important that we support each other, because, I think that internationally speaking, usually women in certain positions do not support other women. And, this is something that I've experienced myself. But I think that, I'm a strong believer in the more, the merrier. And I believe that one woman in a certain position will not make a difference. I think that the more women we have in different positions, political, especially in the political sphere, I believe then we can make a difference. And I believe that, we need to, extend our hands to each other and, pull each other up, because this is how we basically enhance the role of women in politics. And also, I want to also mention this, I feel that women, and, excuse me, I know that there are men who are listening, but I think that women are more principled. Basically, and don't get me wrong. I mean, there are exceptions, obviously, but the majority, or the general sense, is that we commit to the principles. We believe in justice. We want to see things are made in the right way. And I've seen this with women foreign ministers. I've seen this with women diplomats, not only Palestinian, but actually from all over the world, where there is basically an eagerness and a push in order to make things right, and to push in the right direction for justice and for resolutions of conflicts and for ending conflicts and for seeing things be achieved. And basically, this has been my experience. And I think that, we need to encourage and also build, partnerships with women across the world, because this is how you make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Amal, for your very candid answer. Now I would like to have Noor to share her perspective on the question I shared. Ms. Noor, the floor is yours.
Thank you for the good question. And let me start with the first part of the question about the national mechanism, including at grassroots level. We have this national mechanism now in the national plan to implement the 1325 resolution, and it's led by the Women Affairs Ministry. This could be one of the national mechanism to adopt the implementation, or to adopt the participation of for Palestinian women in the peace process in a way or another. And it's three main goals: the prevention and the accountability, and the third one is promoting women participation in decision making. I believe if this plan was implemented as it is expected to be from 2020 to 2023, it could make a difference in the level of the national mechanism to promote the women participation in the peace process. And the grassroots level also, I believe that the awareness of to women and to people in general of their role in that process. It's not just to be a victim, not to be victimized themselves, they should know their rights and how to access to justice on the national, international, and the UN level, how to seek this justice and how to access to it to contribute to that process at least in the term of the accountability. Also, in the second part of the question, how to, I have the question, how about the role that the NGOs is playing in Gaza, particularly in the upcoming election and the national reconciliation. Okay, for the NGOs now, we have this election law now with some restriction maybe, or this rules of nomination for the election, and it's not easy to be eligible for the people who is working in the civil society, because we have new conditions of this part. But we can say that the local NGOs, the Palestinian NGOs, could play a role. If it's not in the nomination, they are the most one of the parties that is could make this observation on the election process as to evaluate its to evaluate this process by this observers and during this election level and steps. Also, they could, and they were in the last years, and they could make the same role while they were awarding and make this empowerment for youth, women, and other vulnerable groups in the community about their political participation. And this is, I believe, this was a very good role despite the non-stable political situation in Palestine, because now I believe that there is this awareness or this belief or of the people rule in this political process, and I believe that they will do it while they know what is their right and this how to do it in this time, how to elect and where and whom, and they have this, they will become fully aware of that things because of the, I believe, because of the NGOs efforts in the last year, and hopefully we can, the NGOs also now are applying pressure on the president to make some changes in the law, but I don't believe that will happen in the upcoming period. This is what I believe in their role in the election. For the bureaucratic for the reconciliation, unfortunately, the Palestinian faction and parties consider themselves the only ones who are responsible for that file or for that issue in our Palestinian reality. The NGOs have this limited role in this process, and as women organization, as women participation, also they didn't play that needed role in that, because they were excluded also from these delegations and from this intervention related to the Palestinian reconciliation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Noor, for your answers and contribution. Before I go to a question that we have received from the audience, I would like to give the floor to the distinguished representative from the Permanent Mission of Egypt here in New York, who had asked and requested the floor to speak. Dear colleague, the floor is yours. Do we have the colleague from the Permanent Mission of Egypt, distinguished representative from the Permanent Mission of Egypt? I do not see our colleagues being here. You're here.
Hello.
Okay, wonderful.
Hello.
Thank you.
Yes. I'm sorry. I was just trying to press the button for some reason.
Okay.
It wasn't going through. I appreciate it. Thank you very much for hosting this event, and thank you so much for our wonderful panelists, ministers, and ambassadors. I have the distinct pleasure of knowing a few of them on a personal level, so it's very Ambassador Fid as a dear colleague here, and Ambassador Jadou, of course. Just wanted to take this opportunity to extend our utmost respect and appreciation for the role that Palestinian women are doing and are shedding an example for others in order to persevere during times of great difficulty, and not just persevere, but to shine as well. Yes, there are challenges, but it's also a moment where a pat on the back and some recognition is highly warranted. I remember I attended an event a few days ago, also on the rights of women and promoting the rights of women, and they discussed 3 R's that were important: rights, representation, and resources, and how these 3 need to come together in order to advance the women empowerment. In a Palestinian context, the issue of rights has a much broader parameters. It's not just the rights to in a normal society, but it's the rights of self-determination, the right of independence, the right of freedom. So for some, it's the right of return. So there is a much added stresses and much added levels of struggle that a Palestinian woman needs to go through in order to reach the needed levels of empowerment which we all desire. Female Palestinian symbols have been prevalent with us throughout the past. I mean, and the Palestinian woman has managed to be a strong symbol of endurance, high education, and strong entrepreneurial skills. Many households are funded through female incomes, as is the case in Egypt. And so I think we are dealing with a situation where it's difficult to say whether the full empowerment of women is going to help. Perhaps it's a symbiotic relationship, but the full empowerment of women in Palestinian society is going to help the Palestinian cause of independence. At the same time, the Palestinian cause of independence and self-determination will help push forward the rights of Palestinian women. So with that, I just wanted to thank you. Thank you for hosting this, Ambassador Raz. Thank you for your patience. Thank you to the panelists, and our deep respect and appreciation to all women, and particularly Palestinian women in their quest. Thank you. You have our full support as always.
I thank the distinguished representative of Egypt. And now I do my sincere apologies, I was muted. I wanted to thank the distinguished representative of Egypt. And following that, I do have a question from one of the audience that was following the discussion we had today. It's from Mr. Ahmad Najim. He did not mention that he has address to whom specifically, but I'm going to address it probably to the 3 panelists. He says some points have to be clarified, especially after the World Bank report on women, business, and law 2021, in which Palestine is occupying the bottom of the list. How do we agree with the standards used in such a report, and what can we do to improve our position while keeping our traditions respected? And I leave to my dear colleagues and dear panelists, whoever wants to take the floor first. Ms. Hind.
No, as a matter of fact, I didn't read the report, so I'm very sorry. I don't think I can comment unless Mr. Najib would sort of clarify what is that report exactly saying, and what is the issue he's raising. I don't, maybe it could be perhaps because on the issue of pushing women to become entrepreneurs and to go out into business and to work and to take that kind of responsibility. And many in our traditional society, and I think rightly so, wonder what will happen to families. I mean, usually we have big families, and the issue of raising families and the time invested and efforts and passion into that is extremely important, is very, very important. I mean, it's a struggle, and I think what is most important is that for Palestine, hopefully, and countries in general, should have a very good social welfare system to support women as they're raising little children, and to give women, even when they're at home raising children, the chance to do continuing education, to get another diploma. And as a matter of fact, our world today with the virtual reality, women have access to information even as they do the housework. You know, all you have to do is plug the earphones in your ears and into your smartphone, and you can listen to lectures and participate in debates. And suddenly the world has opened in a very special way, especially for women. And I think this is going to change the reality. I think women will be going to become much more confident, much more informed, much better informed. And then they will, once we know, I speak also for myself, once I know the issues, I have a position, I have something to say. And so I really believe that the future is bringing some very important changes from which women can benefit. But I also want to insist that taking care of family, and even if it's a double, I mean, life is hard anyway. Life is not about just having plenty of free time and doing nothing and etc. No, life is a major challenge in general. I mean, the human condition is difficult as is. You don't need occupation. You don't need all these wars and aggression. It is very difficult. So how about when we have war and we have daily aggression to live with? Yeah, if we accept that as a given, that we all have to work hard, and we can, and actually it's good for all of us. But then that's how women should also be pushed to believe, to realize, because it's sometimes a scary terrain. So there's a lot of training and awareness building that needs to be done. And I hope, well, under the UN system, I'm a former UN employee, and that's a fantastic resource at so many levels that we should make better use of. I mean, what is important is to have very clear objectives. I also saw many wonderful projects just being shelved and put in the drawers, and that's a shame. I think we need to have very clear goals, very clear priorities with Palestinians, and just charge ahead to make sure we make an impact, and that a difference is made, that real development happens. Mind you, a lot has been investment, and I spoke about the economy. I mean, the structured economy is practically ruined, practically. So, you know, let's review these things together and honestly together, and make sure that we can lift this Palestine and these Palestinians who deserve a better life. For God's sake, we've suffered long enough. We need to live a little. So even my generation, I hope I will be able to enjoy something before I'm dead. But, you know, let's really make life good for Palestinians, not invest and then all we get is hard times. Maybe I indulge, but I usually get a bit passionate about issues.
We do have two more questions, and if I'm allowed as a moderator, I would like to give the chance to those questions and then come back to the panelists, because I'm also pressured that I have to conclude in next 12 minutes. I do see a request from the distinguished representative of Turkey who would like to take the floor, following the distinguished representative from the permanent mission of Cuba to the UN. And so I would like to give the floor first to the distinguished representative of Turkey and followed by Cuba. Turkey, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ambassador. I join others in thanking you and the committee for organizing this wonderful event, and the panelists for their very insightful and exciting stories they shared. It's great to hear their firsthand accounts of their experiences, both in terms of Palestinian rights and women's rights. I'll go straight to my question without taking too much of your time. Deputy Minister Jadou talked about the responsibility of the international community. She also said after the pandemic, we need to reimagine the world. My question is relating to the efforts to revitalizing the Middle East peace process. We're all aware of them. But how can we redouble our efforts to increase women's participation in negotiations and the peace process? What is the role that the international community can play to fulfill its responsibility? And how can we reimagine the world that will fulfill our efforts to realize the peace process? And what can we do differently this time to actually make it happen? Thank you.
Thank you very much to the representative of the Republic of Turkey for her question. And, I believe that, a year from now, the situation would have been extremely bleak. There are positive elements today that we haven't. I think that, the elections in the United States have brought and allowed for, better prospects for, a resumption of any kind of a peace process. This is my arena where, it just I feel basically very very confident in basically tackling basically the election of President Biden, the statements that have come from the Biden administration, from the Biden team first before the elections, and then during the campaign, and then after the the election have been very positive. Not that we don't think that everything is irreversible, but we have been trying basically to focus on the cup half full, and to build on that in order to focus or enhance the basically the engagement with the United States. Actually, the election of President Biden have encouraged many countries also to move in the direction of basically of engaging. I remember several European foreign ministers visited Palestine after the election of President Biden, and before that we didn't nobody was engaging at the level of the peace process. There are also many attempts that are happening regionally speaking. On the 11th, we will have a meeting for what we call the Munich format, basically where a group of 4 countries, Egypt, Jordan, France, and Germany, have been basically trying to, work as a facilitator and have been meeting, issuing statements to ensure that the parameters and international law on the two-state solution are respected and are kept on the mind of the international community. Basically, many foreign ministers are, European and others basically are trying to, get involved in order to pave the way for some kind of a political process to ensue. Also, I want to say that, it's also very, important that we also see, the elections happening in Palestine. And this will also help in the hopefully future negotiations. So many positive elements, but one issue of concern to me today, and that is the Israeli elections that will happen in around 10 days. Today, the competition in Israel is between the extreme right and the more extreme right. And basically the campaigns are waged on who is being harsher towards the Palestinians. So we witness many violations, arrests, and basically, campaigns against the Palestinians, at all levels, and an enhancement of the, settler colonial project that Israel has been, adhering to since 1967. The expansion, the creeping annexation that is happening on the ground is really scary, because Israel, in the meantime, is, while it doesn't speak about annexation anymore, on the ground, what it does is basically designates areas as green areas, designates areas as military areas, basically expands settlements, legalizes outposts. And if you look at within a larger map at all of this, we see basically the larger map of annexation happening on the ground to try to preempt any future negotiations. The Palestinian leadership has been committed to the two-state solution. My president called for an international peace conference in order to, resume negotiations, in order to, see that within a multilateral framework with respect to international law and to UN Security Council resolutions and to UN principles. And basically, this is something that we've been adhering to, and we hope that this may move forward. How is this different? I think that we need to see some kind of different commitment, basically engagement, and not the usual bilateral negotiations with the U.S. as the only mediator, because for more than 25 years, the U.S. has been, dealing with the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, putting the Palestinians and Israelis in one room and, and waiting at the door, waiting for the white smoke to come out, has not worked. So we need to see a change in the approach. I believe that a multilateral approach to negotiations, whereby we see, a group of countries or maybe Quartet Plus can come and help in the negotiation process, because this is there's a huge disparity between the parties. It's very important that we have that multilateral system. The Quartet includes the UN, includes the EU, the Russian Federation, and the United States. And it will be preferable also to have some Arab neighboring countries like Egypt and Jordan and Saudi Arabia, probably, in order to help the process forward. I believe this is something that can ensure that we not only reach agreements, but we also implement agreements. Thank you.
Thank you, Amal. And now I would like to give the floor to the distinguished representative of Cuba.
Yes. Yes, excuse me. Our ambassador was following the meeting, but he needs to run for another activity, and he presents his apologies. We thank you, Ambassador and Vice Chair of the committee, for the good work you are doing as moderator of this important event. We are also pleased to have heard the opening remark of Ambassador Feda, Deputy Permanent Observer of the State of Palestine. In addition, we would like to express our greetings of solidarity to the 3 Palestinian women from different regions and generations who have shared their experience of the enormous tragedy of living under the occupation of the territory and having to face day by day the action of the occupier, who have no limits in destroying Palestinian homes and property, building illegal settlements, offending and attacking men, elders, and children of the Palestinian people, but also women and girls of the long-suffering and courageous people. Since 1948, with the Al-Nakba tragedy, Israeli acts of various kinds against the Palestinian people have not ceased. The occupation is maintained and intensified every day, as well as all illegal actions that we reject, such as the plans to annex the occupied West Bank in gross violation of international law and human rights. We have said and we reiterate it. We strongly denounce the disproportionate use of force by Israeli against Palestinian civilians in the occupied territories, including East Jerusalem and particularly the Gaza Strip, in flagrant violation of the Charter of the United Nations and international humanitarian law. The organization of this event at the margin of the 65th session of the Commission of the Charter of Women is important because it should contribute to continue raising awareness, providing solidarity, and increasing the denunciation on what the Palestinian people continue to suffer as an important part of it, Palestinian women and girls. We ratify our full support for a comprehensive, just, and lasting solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict based on the creation of the 2 states, allowing the Palestinian people to exercise the right to self-determination and to establish an independent and sovereign state of the pre-1967 borders, with East Jerusalem at its capital, and the right of the refugees to return. We reiterate our demand to put an immediate end to the prolonged and illegal Israeli occupation of Palestinian territories, its annexation policy, and the blockade to the Gaza Strip. We urge the international community to demand and support action that allows the implementation of the political process for negotiation, which guarantees the inalienable rights of the Palestinian people and achieve a just and lasting peace for all the people of the region. The abuse and violation of the people of Palestine cannot remain unpunished. Long live the Palestinian women and girls. Thank you very much.
I thank the distinguished representative of Cuba. Before concluding this very rich conversation with our panelists, I do want to give the floor to Noor, because I did hear from Madam Khoury and as well as Amal in regards to the questions. If Ms. Noor, if you have any final words, otherwise I'm going to give the floor back to Fida, my dear friend and sister and colleague here in New York, to share her concluding remarks. Ms. Noor, would you like to add something?
Thank you. It was a great session, in fact, and to hear my colleagues and the contribution from other colleagues. The last thing I would like to say about it could be considered as a recommendation that the atmosphere of working of the civil society should be supported more and more. The Palestinian civil society should be supported even by not only by the national or the authority, also we need the international support. We need to improve the condition of the fund. We are seeking the non-conditional funding and to release or to with the Israeli restriction on the Palestinian NGOs also, and its measures and its participation against these organizations. Also, we are looking as part of the local community and this Palestinian society for more democratic and freedom in delivering our work, and to particularly in the laws and in the legislation level, and hopefully we can reach that one day, particularly if we reach the Palestinian election. Thank you.
Thank you, Noor, and my dear sister Fida, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ambassador Raz, and thank you to all of our panelists, Dr. Amal, Minister Hind, and Ms. Noor, for so graciously, honestly, and passionately sharing your insights with us. I have to admit, at times it was painful to consider the many real challenges and setbacks being faced by Palestinian women in all spheres of life due to the political, social, and economic realities they are facing. Foremost, the challenges and difficulties deliberately caused by Israel's 54-year foreign occupation. As our panelists have stressed, Palestinian women, along with the rest of the Palestinian people, face a critical, if not existential, crossroads as our people's very presence in their homeland and the prospects for the realization of their freedom and rights, including to self-determination and return, are being gravely violated and threatened by the occupying power, making ever more urgent not only international support to Palestine, but serious, responsible, collective action to uphold international law, implement UN resolutions, and hold this illegal occupation accountable to the same laws all countries are obliged to respect. This is imperative, we know, to bring an end to the Israeli occupation of Palestine and its subjugation of our people, and to achieve a just solution that will guarantee the realization of our people's rights and the independence of the state of Palestine with East Jerusalem as its capital, and to open a new chapter of genuine peace and stability that will enable the realization of all human rights, including, of course, the rights to which women are entitled as part of this human race, and which they continue to regrettably be denied. At the same time, I wish to say that your presentations were also inspiring as they reminded us of the real dynamism, capacity, strength, and resilience of Palestinian women and the enormous contribution they have made to our just struggle, continue to make, and must be enabled to make as we continue to strive for freedom, justice, and of course, equal rights. And I would say that you also importantly pointed out many internal issues affecting our women for which solutions must be prioritized on that road to equality and freedom. And so here in closing, I would like to recognize the UN support, UN Women, UNRWA, UNDP, UNICEF, and also this committee's capacity building program, among others, in extending assistance to Palestinian women and girls, along with NGOs and donor countries prioritizing women's empowerment. This support has helped promote the well-being and protection of our women and girls, as well as avenues for education, skill development, and employment. It remains vital at a time when the risks to progress made is high, and it should be focused and targeted to defined needs and prioritize, as has been stressed by our panelists and lastly by Noor. Thank you all to all who are supporting our efforts on this journey. Thank you again, Ambassador Raz, to the entire Committee on the Exercise of the Inalienable Rights of the Palestinian People, and to all countries and people supporting the just cause of Palestine. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Feda, for your excellent way of concluding this rich discussion we had today, for summarizing one of the most important elements that have been discussed, and my sincere gratitude to the excellent panelists. I think this was extremely enriching. It was extremely informative. It helped us a lot to see the challenges, the opportunities, and as well hopes, not only for women of Palestine, but I think for a lot of women across the world, because there are so much similarities we'll share and some of the struggles we all have together. So this has been a very inspiring and enriching exchange, which highlighted the problems we face, especially in the era of COVID-19. And let's hope that we share for all countries in the world, including my own. And we count on the next generation of equality to achieve full gender equality and empowerment of women. This meeting is closed, and I thank you again all for participation.